First, we will have Mayor LaFrance make some remarks. Hello, thank you all for being here today. We are here today on what should have been a 16-year-old's last day of summer break before her junior year. As a community member, as mayor, as a mom of a 16-year-old, I am heartbroken that we have lost such a young life in our community. To the family of Easter Lifa, I am so incredibly sorry for your loss. This young woman deserved to be safe in our community, and you deserved so much more time with her. To the family and to the community asking questions, you deserve answers. You deserve action, and you deserve accountability. The officer-involved shooting on August 13 was the 6th officer-involved shooting in Anchorage this year. We cannot and we will not accept this as our new normal. We cannot take back the pain associated with such a young loss of life this week, but we can do everything in our power to make sure this doesn't happen again in our community. I am here today alongside Chief Case to outline a series of actions meant to get the facts and to get a handle on how we stop this cycle of officer-involved shootings in our community. This work starts with having clear and accurate information. First, the internal investigation of the August 13 incident will be completed by a third-party investigator. Officer-involved shootings are typically investigated within APD by APD Internal Affairs. I have directed that the investigation into the August 13 incident be conducted by an outside investigator. The State of Alaska's Office of Special Prosecutions will continue to oversee the criminal investigation of the incident to determine if criminal charges against officers are warranted. Additionally, a third party will conduct a comprehensive review of APD's training, tactics, and supervision and make recommendations for change. An outside entity will audit APD's policies and practices and recommend changes to reduce officer-involved shootings. Unlike internal investigations or the court proceedings, the outside entity will not focus on when the use of force might be legally justified. Instead, it will seek to recommend additional practices that APD can implement to reduce the use of force and prevent officer-involved shootings. A public report will be produced so that the community has visibility into the changes within the department. I have tasked the Municipal Attorney's Office with managing these investigations. These investigations are about getting to the facts so that we can chart a clearer course for the department and for our community. I know there is a lot of pain and anger right now and a lot of work to do to make sure everyone feels safe in our community. We must engage with community members to do that, especially members of the BIPOC community, as these shootings disproportionately impact people of color. Our police force is full of dedicated men and women who are sworn to protect the public. They take their oath seriously and do their absolute best to follow law and policy. But what happened to Ms. Lifa is not something we ever want to happen again. My job is to make sure APD has the resources and training it needs to do things differently. I am grateful for the chief's leadership. I am grateful to those in the department doing difficult jobs under intense pressure. And I am committed. I am committed to listening. I am committed to learning. I am committed to taking action to make Anchorage a place where everyone feels safe. With that, I will turn to the chief to talk about the community committee that APD will establish and the work that APD already has underway.
The Anchorage Police Department strives first and foremost to keep our community safe. When we take a life, we know the impact it takes on the family, the community, and the officers that were involved. When the mayor asked me to be chief, we shared some common goals: increasing community trust, creating better relationships with underserved populations across the city, and to be visible so people can feel like they can come to us with their concerns. This goal remains. We're going to establish an advisory committee. The advisory committee is important to me because it allows me and the Anchorage Police Department to continuously engage with members of our community to get their perspective and to understand some of the things that the relationship and some of the struggles they have with the police department, and to increase those relationships in the future. On day 2 of becoming the chief, I selected a lieutenant to look at the last 15 years of officer-involved shootings. So look at those shootings not just from the perspective of training, but also tactics being used and supervision during those incidents. Although that is not complete, we have enough information that we're going to move forward and start making some of those changes immediately within our training curriculum. On August 26th, I'll promote a captain that will oversee the training academy. That captain will not only look at academy training, but continuing education with our officers. That captain will focus on de-escalation and communication, tactics, and topics that ensure that we are training things to our police officers that represent the values of this community. With these new initiatives rolled out today, I want to make it clear: I have confidence in all the officers and professional staff across the department. We all want to ensure that we have the best training, the best policies, and best practices to keep Anchorage residents safe. The recent number of officer-involved shootings is well outside the average that we're used to seeing in Anchorage. And I know that many community members are concerned, as are we. I never want people to be unsure that they can call the police. It is my job to restore community trust and to work with all Anchorage residents and to let them know that we're here to protect and serve in the most professional and compassionate manner possible. Mayor and I will take some questions.
Are there questions?
Just a clarifying question first. The third-party review, is the third party the municipal attorney's office, or is there another entity that's doing the analysis and review?
The question was, is the third-party review a third party or the municipal attorney's office? The municipal attorney's office will manage that contract. It will be a third party outside of the municipality. And as we have more information, we will share the details with the public.
Why did APD choose to release Kristopher Handy's body cam footage the day after he released it?
About a week and a half ago, we the question was why the Anchorage Police Department released the unedited videos that we didn't originally release in the Kristopher Handy officer-involved shooting. About a week and a half ago, I did an interview with Anchorage Daily News where I indicated that we would be releasing that footage at some particular time, and then later I gave them the date of this Thursday, and so that date was already pre-scheduled and pre-planned, and so I wanted to make sure that we held true to that commitment.
Mayor,
So the question is, what's the proportions of people of color as far as
the six.
the six? I believe actually the chief may be able to provide more detail on that if I'm understanding the question correctly. Is that
And maybe before the chief answers that, I
Mhm.
mean, at least four are people of color.
Mhm.
Does that number jump out to you? And
Well, yes, absolutely. And we have a lot of work to do. And I mean that when I say I'm committed as mayor to listening and to reaching out. We've started that process of reaching out to folks in the BIPOC community. I will be available to meet with individuals, with groups, because we have got to do better. This cannot be our new normal, and we know that folks, as I mentioned and as you pointed out, in the BIPOC community are disproportionately impacted, and so we have work to do.
what kind of work?
It starts with listening, it starts with conversations, and that, as mayor, is what I'm setting out to do.
I'm gonna move on, Rebecca.
You said that so far people are looking at the last 15 years of police shootings. How many shootings is that, and what have you learned so far?
So the question is, how many shootings over the 15 years, and what have we learned so far? We generally average across that span about 3 officer-involved shootings a year. In fact, in most years, we almost have exactly that number in several years. So that's pretty much held true through that entire data set, with the exception of this year was a number that was definitely outside of that norm. And what we have noticed through those 15-year spans so far is we noticed that a lot of our officers who are involved in officer-involved shootings in the last couple of years elected to not be police officers anymore, and they've left the department. We noticed that we've had an increase in officers at a particular scene. So typically we're used to seeing 1 or 2 officers involved in an officer-involved shooting at a time. We've seen that number increase. And we've seen some of the rounds fired during the incidents increase from what we've seen in previous years when you go back to the beginning of that data set.
We have time for one more. Leslie?
I know that the city having the mobile crisis team and mobile intervention teams over the past few years, and it strikes me that in at least a couple of these shootings, there were mental health crises happening. Do you anticipate in the future maybe having that group work more closely with the police department? Because, I know in the Kristopher Handy incident, there were many signs in the after report that he was having a mental health breakdown.
So the question is the mobile intervention team going to work more closely with officers in the future? So they're paired with an officer right now. They have a full-time officer as their partner as they go to calls for service. And we've had the team for just a little over a year. And so we have given them a specific direction in that year. And as they are new to the department, we have made sure to not involve them in some of the incidents that are in progress. In the future, they're going to be, in fact, it's already scheduled to be going to crisis negotiation training with our crisis negotiators. And that's one of the first steps to get them actively involved in some of these scenarios that are in progress, so that they know how to operate in those scenarios that create a risk to them.
Just take one more and then we have to.
I appreciate the attempt at transparency of both the mayor and the police, and I'm interested and appreciate your short-term and long-term plans to de-escalate what's happening in our community. But those plans that you have in place right now, what are you going to do prior to the training that you're offering and the review board? What are we going to do now to stop the police initiation? This young man just said that we already have, it's been here since 2022, that de-escalation compact in New York, and you need more training, but what are you going to do now? That's number one. Before that report, it could be 6 months, it could be 3 months. What are you going to do now to ensure that we don't have any more incidents like this? And number two, how can we put humanity back into policing and let the, even if you can't disclose it to the public, general public, how can you develop a relationship with the families that are affected, that they are notified in a more timely and humane manner? Those are 2 questions.
So the first question was, how do we make immediate impact? And the one way to make immediate impact in terms of influence or reducing officer-involved shootings is supervision on scene. And of course, one thing that we have to understand is that a lot of these scenarios are extremely dynamic, and there's not a lot of time. And where we have situations where we do have time, we want to make sure that not only we have supervisors on scene that can manage the overall scene, but we also bring to those scenes different tools like less lethal tools, so that our responses aren't narrowed down to just lethal response. So that's the first things that we can have immediate impact on. In terms of the humanity questions, the question is how can we, I don't want to put word, but restore humanity or bring humanity to policing. So I think when we think about policing the very diverse community that we have, one of the things that connects the police department to the public is our ability to connect with each other. And one of the things I've learned is shortest distance between two people is a story. And so bringing those stories to the police department so that we understand the various communities that we are engaging with. And it's a very powerful tool. And we've been working on that already. We've been working on that actually for before I took over. And that's kind of one of the cornerstones of the increased communication as we move forward.
Thank you so much. That's all we got time for.
Chief, I just have one question. Is out of the 6, how many are people of color? But I wasn't sure. There are 2 that I don't